Welcome back to Mock Draft Saturday, another iteration of these mock drafts leading up to the real thing, which is in about 3 weeks. But today we're not doing traditional mock draft, a 2-round mock draft. We're doing something a little bit different, but it should be pretty fun. We're going to be using a wheel today. Right here, here's what it's looking like to decide which player, which team, what they do, if they trade up, trade down. You see all the options here: defense, offense, trade, reach. Shout out to Bengal. He's on YouTube. He's kind of a legend. He does all sorts of fun videos like this. I kind of got this idea from him. So shout out to Bengal. But I have a little bit of a different twist on it today because I do have somebody helping me out with this mock draft. It's again, my good friend Stone. We have opponent pick here. It is in the wheel. So if one of us lands on that, we get to steal the other person's pick, have back-to-back selections. I'm expecting to have some pretty fun today using this wheel here. He's got his own wheel, and we'll just figure it out as we go through the mock draft. But this is what the wheel's looking like, and the first selection is the Chicago Bears. I'm going to give Stone all of the odd selections, so he gets the first pick for the Bears. I'll do all the evens, and let's see how this turns out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Now, normally, we would obviously be doing a wheel for this pick because we're going to do it for almost every pick, but this first overall pick, it's pretty obvious. There's not really a need to do an entire wheel. It would kind of just defeat the whole purpose of like a real mock draft. So we're going to go with Caleb Williams because it is the consensus #1 pick. It's guaranteed to happen. I think it's just a pretty simple thing to go and stamp, and we're just going to have to wait till draft time for it to happen. So Caleb Williams, #1 to the Bears, still going to happen.
Yep, makes total sense. Caleb Williams has been locked into Chicago for months now. And similarly with the second pick, we know it's going to be a quarterback, but is it going to be Drake May? Is it going to be Jaden Daniels? I'm going to use a random number generator between 1 or 2 on my phone to figure out which of those players Commanders are going to take. Obviously not the wheel yet, but I feel like the real draft is going to start with the third pick with the Patriots. It's really just between those 2 quarterbacks with the Commanders. So I'm going to use this right here. #1 will be Drake May. #2 will be Jaden Daniels. And let's see what the random number generator predicts. And here we go. It's the second pick, and my phone says #2. So Jaden Daniels, he will be going to the Washington Commanders. This has been talked about, mocked about over and over. Daniels to Washington, can definitely see it happening. I would go with May, but Daniels in this mock draft is going to be the future quarterback of the Washington Commanders.
I would also go May, but that is what it had decided to do. So Jaden, like you said, been rumored, and that'll be the first pick. Now we get our first wheel. This is going to be what the wheel looks like. We got a lot of different stuff on here, and we're just going to pretty much spin it for every single pick. And we're going to start off, give it a good couple spins with the New England Patriots. And they are going to have to take a reach with this first pick. I am sorry, Patriots fans. Now, because I have to do a reach for the Patriots, they could end up going maybe a lower receiver, as quarterback is kind of the rumored position, but maybe they just take receiver. But I'm going to go with a position that they are projected to take, but not the one that they would presumably take at #3. We are going to skip over Drake May and go J.J. McCarthy at #3. It's not a major reach. It's just a regular reach, and he is projected around this range, but I would definitely say with him being at #3 without them trading back and over Drake May, I think that'd be a reach and an interesting situation for New England, as this may be who they prefer over Drake May if he falls.
100%. The Patriots are going to be a very fascinating team because the draft, I feel like, really starts with them. They're going to have their option most likely at May or McCarthy, depending, I guess, on who the Commanders take. Here it's Daniels. So they do have that option, and there has been some rumors maybe the Patriots like McCarthy better than all of these guys, minus Caleb Williams. So fascinating with the Patriots at #3, but I could definitely see that happening. And now the Arizona Cardinals, another team that has Marvin Harrison mocked to them for over a year now, it feels like. But I don't know what the wheel is going to think here. So here we are, the wheel, first spin for me. What are they going to have the Arizona Cardinals select here? And it is going to be an opponent pick. We have our first opponent pick already with my first wheel spin. Stone gets to use my selection, and I think I know what route you're going to go.
Well, pretty unlucky for that to be the first pick. Normally, if I do opponent pick, I like to change it up and maybe steal some different stuff. But this time, I just don't think I can do that right now. Just does not make any sort of sense. Now, the wheel is not supposed to make sense, but even though I like reaching, we'll stay with the chalk and the right pick, and that is Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Arizona Cardinals. Most likely what's going to happen if the Cardinals do not trade back, and he's the best receiver in the class, the most polished. Don't overthink it. He's a stud, going to be amazing. Arizona, they do end up getting MHJ with their first pick. Now I get to go again with this pick for the Los Angeles Chargers. Let's see what the wheel forces me to do. And it is another reach. I have to go a reach for the Chargers at 5. Now, they do have a number of different positions that they could take. Looking at potentially, I think the two biggest ones being offensive line and wide receiver. But it's not a major reach, it's a regular reach. And I don't think, obviously, we could do Malik Neighbors or Joe Alt. So I think we're going to go with a player who is, again, a similar position, obviously, to one of those two, but someone that's not necessarily ranked, I believe, the same way, and I think is solidly, some people say it as the second best tackle, and that is Talisi Fuaga out of Oregon State. I think he is a stud. Some people obviously do prefer Joe Alt, and he's ranked much higher. Could also go Rome Odunze if you wanted to give a reach pick, but I think it is smart to get their offensive line just completely stout. They want to run the ball with Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman over there, so might be a little bit of a reach, but it's still a solid pick with Talisi Fuaga at 5.
The New York Giants, a team that desperately needs some help on the offensive side of the ball, probably the worst weaponry in the sport currently. And we will see if the wheel will be favorable to the Giants, who just need a little bit of luck in their fortune. So here we go. It is going to be offense. I spoke it into existence. It was number 6. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Look who is at the board at number 3. Drake May, out of North Carolina. If he made it to the number 6 spot, I think the Giants, in probably 2 seconds, would have that draft card sent into the commissioner. Drake May is going to the New York Giants with the 6th pick. Obviously, could be wide receiver or an offensive lineman. I did mention the Giants have the worst weaponry in the sport. But when Drake May is on the board, with how this mock has turned out, Drake May to the Giants makes too much sense.
For the next pick, I believe it's the Tennessee Titans. We are going to give it a good couple spins, and it's going to be consensus. So I think this is going to be a pretty easy pick. It's Joe Alt. You could even look at the analysis. Joe Alt, 60% or so of the picks. Tackle is the main one. Fuaga went ahead. Joe Alt, I know Titans fans, you get it all the time, but be happy. It's a very good player, franchise tackle for you. So it happens. They made me go consensus. Joe Alt, Tennessee Titans.
Not a ton of crazy picks so far. Hopefully we turn up here in just a little bit, but the Falcons are up next, a team that needs a corner, needs some help on their defensive line. We will see here who they can get to help out Kirk Cousins and Raheem Morris in their first year. And it is going to be a random position. So we also have this other wheel right here that is every single position on a football field. It's in this little wheel right here. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, kicker, punter. We shall see here who the Falcons have to take. And it is going to be linebacker. Linebacker for the Atlanta Falcons. So this is going to be a position that the Falcons could look to upgrade, but definitely not with the 8th overall pick. So I think Peyton Wilson is who I'm going to pick here. Linebacker going in the top 10. Not something that happens unless there's a bona fide generational guy like Luke Kuechly or somebody like that. But Peyton Wilson at NC State, I do like his game. Think he has a chance to be a Pro Bowl caliber player if he can stay healthy. My top linebacker in this class. A little bit of a huge reach so far, but the position wheel said linebacker, have to do it. Peyton Wilson to Atlanta.
Maybe he lives up to being a top 10 pick in the future. Who knows? But yeah, definitely the current state of the draft. Not a great, I mean, it might be a good player, but definitely a reach for Atlanta there. Now we have the Chicago Bears with their 2nd overall pick. They actually get to do the wheel spin this time, and it's going to be defense. Almost a reach, very close, but we're going to have to go with a defensive player. And in terms of their current roster and what they're looking at, I think potentially getting another edge rusher would help out a lot alongside Montez Sweat. And there is Leitu Latu, there's Dallas Turner, Jared Verse. For Chicago, I think a team that just wants to get really good players, they could end up taking a risk on Leitu Latu, and I think it's, he is, I would say, the best pass rusher, but For Chicago, maybe it'd be just better to get the first sure guy to be a real playoff contender next year and not have anyone miss a lot of games, and that's Dallas Turner. Good athlete, very good production, just going to be super solid, and him and Montez Sweat are going to be one of the better pass rushing duos if this happens in the NFL.
And the New York Jets would be very happy with how the board has fallen to this point. Malik Neighbors, Ramadunze, Brock Bowers, 3 of the top weapons in this draft still on the board here with the 10th pick. But will the wheel let the Jets take one of those guys to pair with Mike Williams, Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers? Let's see what this lands on. And it is going to be my choice. I get the selection, and you know who I'm going to take here? It's going to be Malik Neighbors. Pairing him with Garrett Wilson would be a fantastic and super explosive 1-2 punch. You have your big body and red zone target and Mike Williams if you can stay healthy. Adding Malik Neighbors to that offense would make it one of the most explosive in the league with Breece Hall. And then, of course, Garrett Wilson, Neighbors, that would be super fun to watch. Neighbors has that OBJ type of play style. I've mentioned it multiple times. Adding that to another New York team, or I guess New Jersey, but you know what I mean? That would be very fun to watch, super entertaining. Malik Neighbors lasting to number 10 and going to the New York Jets.
Now I have the Vikings. They stayed at 11, did not trade up. So let's go ahead and see what they're going to get from the wheel. And that is going to be a reach, not a large reach, but just a general reach. So let's see what Minnesota could do at this spot. Obviously, we know quarterback that is pulled up is definitely a position of need for them, but they do have a lot of other issues that they could address as well. Normally, you would think maybe at this position we could go quarterback. And even if it says reach, maybe we could go quarterback with Bo Nix or Michael Penix. Unfortunately, I think those guys' just range is so large that 11, staying at 11 and taking a quarterback is very possible. It might be a reach in some people's eyes, but not necessarily a reach in terms of the Vikings. So let's go with a position that they do need, people don't really think about. Their secondary is not very good, and with it being a reach, we're not going to go Quinion Mitchell or anything. Cornerback class varies a ton. Some people have other guys rated higher. So we're going to end up going with Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. He is surprisingly going to be the first corner off the board. A little bit handsy, very fast though. Needs to be a little bit more consistent in coverage, learn kind of the NFL rules and just how the game works. But I think in press up front, he's very physical, does a very good job, especially for his size. And for Minnesota, maybe they're saying, hey, we could get one of these quarterbacks later in the draft and maybe just wait and have the Sam Darnold experience for a year. And if it doesn't work, go out and get a quarterback next year and try and upgrade our team around us.
Fairly interesting, but I do think Nate Wiggins would be a good fit in Brian Flores' defense down there in Minnesota. Who knows? Maybe they could go quarterback here, but like you said, fairly wide range for, the 4th and 5th quarterback off the board, whether that's Penix or Bo Nix. But the Denver Broncos, they would be pretty happy with this because both Penix and Nix would be on the board. But will the wheel let Sean Payton take his quarterback of the future? We shall see. And the wheel is going to give me a defensive player. A defensive player for the Denver Broncos is very interesting. I don't think anybody has had that mock to them all off season long. It's either been like a weapon, either Brock Bowers, a receiver, maybe a quarterback, but a defensive player, I have not seen that a ton. But I think I'm going to go with Laitu Latu out of UCLA here. They need an edge rusher. They traded away Bradley Chubb. They've lost a couple of free agents on that side of the ball. Latu can step in right away and be a premier pass rusher. I think he has the highest ceiling out of anybody in this class in terms of getting to the quarterback. Has some injury concerns. Will he be able to play 17 games and stay in the league for multiple years, or will his injuries catch up to him? We'll have to wait and see about that. But in terms of just being a player and a fit in a defense, Latu fits really nicely in Vance Joseph's scheme. I think he'd be a really good fit in Denver. So having a good defense here, Latu going number 12. The Broncos.
Big swing. I like it for Denver. Next up, the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's see what the wheel forces me to do. And it's going to be a trade. Since I have to do a trade, I'm going to have the Cincinnati Bengals move up because there are some enticing weapons still on the board. They're going to give up 18 and a second-round pick next year. And the Raiders are going to give up 13 and 148 this year. And the Cincinnati Bengals, it's pretty much just one or two players. It's between these two guys, Rome Odunze and Brock Bowers. Realistically speaking, I think I'm going to go with the position that they currently need right now. They could need receiver, but right now, I think tight end would be a good pick, and Brock Bowers is just an overall stud of a weapon, so it could happen in real life as well. We're going to end up going Brock Bowers to the Bengals. They would love to obviously use that weapon in their offense, even if T. Higgins leaves, and I think at this position might be a little bit easier to replace that wide receiver than tight end, because you don't see a ton of stud tight ends like this come around very often.
Yeah, that'd be very fascinating to see Bowers with Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and maybe even T. Higgins for a year like you mentioned. Even with T. Higgins potentially being on the trade market, this does make a lot of sense to get another just cheap option. And even when he's up for contract, in 4 or 5 years, he wouldn't have to be paid $20+ million like other receivers. So it does make sense here to go tight end over, Odunze. But number 14 for the New Orleans Saints, they could go receiver, they could go offensive line. I think lineman is probably their biggest need though. So I would hope that the wheel would give the Saints a little bit of good fortune here. But we'll see what the wheel decides. And it is going to be, again, an opponent pick. You're again stealing one of my selections.
And we have the Saints here, who definitely need just one or two between these two positions. They probably need to take one of them in the first round. That's O-line and D-line. Looking at the board now, I think there is one pick that I think they could realistically go with. A guy who was projected to go super high last year, fell off a little bit in terms of just his overall production, but is still a phenomenal athlete, and that is Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. Yes, it is pronounced Fashanu. That is how I found out. Again, like I said, very, very good. Still didn't have amazing production, but was not bad at all. It's not like he fell off a cliff. There were just other guys that passed him up. This could obviously be definitely a realistic pick anyways, so I won't go too crazy. We'll give the Saints Olu, because there might be some crazy picks later on in the draft. And now, since I stole his pick for the second time, I am up again with the Indianapolis Colts, and it's going to be defense. Probably what I would have gone either way. Maybe they could take a wide receiver, but looking at the board with defense, it's easy. It's Quinion Mitchell. We have had this in multiple mock drafts. Just the perfect pick, pretty much. He's an amazing athlete. I love his production. I think he's going to be a stud, and I think the Colts would absolutely love to take him here. So far, have a few reaches. Peyton Wilson, Malik Neighbors falling, Leitu Latu going here, Brock Bowers, Fuaga, but not the craziest mock draft so far.
Yeah, hopefully with the last 16 picks, maybe we can see some big shakeups. But the Seattle Seahawks are up next, and they just need some help really on either side of the line, whether that's offensive line, getting a guard or a center hybrid, or maybe even another pass rusher, just somebody to help out in the trenches. And we're going to get a trade here with the Seattle Seahawks, our second of the mock draft. And I think I'm going to have somebody move up for Rome Odunze since he is still on the board. And the team that makes the most sense to me, I think, is the Buffalo Bills at number 28, moving up around 12 spots to make this trade possible. They're going to have to give up a good amount. But when there's a talent like Rome Odunze still on the board here in the middle of the first round, you got to make something happen. So I think this is roughly what the trade value would be. The Bills give up their 28th pick. They also give up 2 second-rounders. To move up 12 spots, they also get a third-round pick in the middle of that round from Seattle. So we're going to force this trade through, and with the number 16 pick, the Bills will be taking Rome Odunze as their new wide receiver one with Stephon Diggs out the door. A great fit in Buffalo and somebody that could really step in right away. Be a great target for Josh Allen.
I love this scenario for them. Obviously, if Odunze falls, you got to pounce on it, and that obviously is a lot to give up, but Odunze is a stud, so works out pretty well for the Buffalo Bills there. Then we have the Jacksonville Jaguars with the 17th pick, and I'm going to have to go with a random position. Now, this one's very interesting. We obviously saw this a few picks ago. It's going to have to be any position. Yes, even kicker or punter. That's how chaotic it's going to be. Or quarterback. It's going to be insane. Hopefully it's not too crazy, because I don't want to have to make some hard decisions. But we're going to try and spin it a ton. And we're going to see what they give us. And it's going to be a tight end going at 17. Well, there's pretty much only one that could go here, and that's Jatavion Sanders out of Texas. Maybe, obviously, Jacksonville, they clearly decide they don't have enough weapons. Maybe they don't love some of the receivers that are on the board. Evan Ingram, maybe they would say, hey, we kind of want someone that's just a little bit bigger than you, or maybe a little more of a better inline blocker, and they want to play a 2 tight end set. They get Ja'Tavion Sanders in the first round. Obviously, he could go, but I highly doubt it. But hey, that's the wheel it forced me to take. And Jacksonville goes tight end Ja'Tavion Sanders. Hey, it could be worse. You could have a kicker or a punter.
Probably our second huge shocker of Ja'Tavion Sanders going in the middle of the first round. Maybe he sneaks in towards the bottom, but I don't really expect that either. So him going right here is pretty wild. But the Raiders are back on the board after trading down, and they still have some quarterbacks on the board. Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix. Will they have a chance to select one of those guys here? The wheel is going to say we have to take a reach. And I think I'm going to go quarterback here. And our last mock, Raider fans got super upset with me that I had the Raiders trading up and then taking Michael Penix. Well, here, they're going to trade back and take Michael Penix again. So they still get their quarterback of the future, but they get more assets after moving back with the Bengals. So Raider fans, you guys can relax a little bit. But Penix, I think he could step in and be a very good player and passer from day one. Has some red flags in terms of his medical. He needs to learn how to throw over the middle of the field a little bit more. His mobility is a little bit questionable in terms of getting outside of the pocket, making people miss. But if you protect him, build a wall up front, and give him time to throw, he will make your defense pay. Michael Penix Jr., amazing arm talent. You could probably argue maybe the second best arm in this draft behind Caleb Williams, depending on what you consider overall arm talent, but he just has an absolute cannon, can layer the ball. Penix is a very impressive passer of the football. Going 18 to the Raiders, and they get their quarterback.
Yeah, I think you could justify that being a potential reach, at least where he's projected to go talent-wise, and I think we relatively wanted them to get a quarterback. But again, yeah, you traded down instead of up, so can't be too mad at that. Next pick for me, let's see what they're going to give me. It's almost a random position, but we're going to have to end up doing a trade for the LA Rams. I'm going to have the Minnesota Vikings go up and get their quarterback. They ended up waiting on him, took a defensive player because that's what we needed to do. And with Michael Penix going off the board, they're not going to waste any time. It's going to be 23, 108, a third rounder next year, and a fifth because they don't have a second round pick at all or a third round pick in this year's draft. It looks like a lot, but the value does even out. They'll go up to 19 and get a random compensatory pick back, and we're going to force this trade through, and Minnesota is going to trade up to take their potential future quarterback in Bo Nix. In terms of what he might bring to the table different from Kirk Cousins, he's definitely more mobile. He's still very, very good in terms of short line throws. He wasn't really allowed to throw deep a ton, and that's kind of the JJ McCarthy question of is it that he can do it or maybe he can't, and the coaches didn't know. I will say we have had an Oregon quarterback before where the offense may have held him back a bit and he ended up being a stud, so not necessarily saying that's 100% the case with Bo Nix, but maybe he can go to Minnesota and be their starting quarterback in the future and maybe unlock something with the slew of weapons they have over there in Minnesota.
Yeah, I like it. Makes sense for the Vikings to wait on their quarterback a little bit and then move up once really it's down to one left that has potential first round value. But the Steelers are up next, a team that needs some help on the offensive line, maybe wide receiver, maybe corner. Pretty flexible team here. Will the wheel even let the Steelers pick here? Let's take a look. And it is going again to be opponent pick, the third so far this video. You get to steal my pick once again.
I can't believe I continue to get these opponent picks the third time this video. Jeez, this is unlucky. Maybe you want to spin that wheel a few more times. But we have the Pittsburgh Steelers here at 20. And yeah, could go in a number of different directions here. I think I'm kind of looking at O-line, and there might be some better O-linemen up here. Should I go down the board? I don't know. Kind of interesting, but I'll spare you, Steelers fans. We'll go with a guy who probably shouldn't have fallen this far, but it's possible. Troy Fautanu. It says tackle. He can play tackle, but he also play inside. So I think they would enjoy the flexibility there because they definitely have holes at both of those positions. So Troy Fautanu falls, and the Steelers end up getting him at 20. Now I get to pick again because I was able to be given a third opponent pick. Hopefully I get one so that he can kind of make up for the picks he had. Maybe this one, considering it is the Miami Dolphins. And the wheel is... literally spoken into fruition. It is opponent pick.
All right, the Miami Dolphins here on the board with number 21. I could see Byron Murphy, maybe a tackle, maybe a pass rusher. The Dolphins did just sign Tyler Tart from the Houston Texans, though. They've signed multiple journeyman defensive linemen this offseason to help fill the void of Christian Wilkins. So I do think they could go wide receiver here. I do think they could go also potentially with some help on the interior of their offensive line. That's what I'm going to do. Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon, who can play center, who can play guard. The Dolphins did sign Aaron Brewer in free agency to step in and be their new center, but they do need some help still at either guard position with Robert Hunt leaving, and their current starter at left guard is Isaiah Wynn. So they do need some help there. So Jackson Powers Johnson makes a lot of sense at number 21, going down to South Beach. And now the Eagles. I'm not used to going back-to-back picks here. They're up next, and they need some help on their defense, whether that's linebacker or even some help in the secondary. Will the wheel allow them to get the help that they need? And it is going to be a random position, another one of these, which can get fairly scary for teams because they could just take some weird positions. We have so many different ones here, and they're going to have to take, it's going to just barely be inside offensive linemen, which they could go potentially because they did lose, of course, one of the best centers of all time in Jason Kelce, but not a position I would necessarily think that the Eagles would go after in this draft. But I think the top one still on the board is going to be Graham Barton. I know it says tackle, but at the next level, he's going to play center or guard, one of those two positions. He will not be a tackle. So Graham Barton to the Eagles, not completely out of the realm of possibility just because Howie Roseman does love to take trench players, whether that's pass rushers, whether that's just loading up on the offensive line. He loves to go in either of those directions. So Graham Barton going down to Philadelphia.
Now I get to go for the Rams, who we had trading down recently, and we're going to give this a good couple spins. I kind of want something interesting. Give us something crazy, and nope, it's going to be my choice, but I could make it crazy if I want to. The Rams here at 23 could go, obviously, a number of different positions. I don't think I could get too insane. We have to be relatively realistic when we have the chance. And in terms of just looking on the board, a player who I've mocked to them quite a bit, I think a guy who they could take to try and fill the void that Aaron Donald left. He's going to have to do a ton to even get close to that, but still a good player that they need, with a position because Aaron Donald is now gone, and that is going to be Byron Murphy II out of Texas, a phenomenal athlete. He also had very good production. Some of these interior defensive linemen are very good athletes who didn't have a lot of production or had a lot of production, not a very good athlete. I think Byron Murphy's a solid combination of both. I do think he is the best interior defensive lineman over Jazon Newton in this class, and I think LA trading down, maybe they would have already taken him in at 19. So pretty good situation there for the Rams.
Definitely a good mock for the Rams. They move down, also get some more picks, and then take the best defensive tackle, in my opinion, in this draft in Byron Murphy II. But now the Dallas Cowboys are up next, and they've had a pretty quiet offseason. Feels like they always do because they don't spend a lot of money because they pay all of their own players. But Cowboy fans want something to get excited about. So hopefully the wheel can have something pretty interesting here for the Cowboys. I've had them mocked with a tackle, maybe a linebacker, maybe a receiver. But the wheel is going to have us take a trade. So the Cowboys are going to have to trade down and get some more capital. I'm going to have the Cowboys trade back with the Kansas City Chiefs. And who is on the board that they could go after? Well, it's going to be a wide receiver, and his name is Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. The Bills trade up for their wide receiver in Rome Odunze, and their kind of rival in the conference The Kansas City Chiefs are going to do the same thing and get Brian Thomas. He's a physical freak, over 6'4", 220 pounds, ran like 4.3 at the 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine. Brian Thomas Jr. is a stud, fits really nicely in with that X role for the Chiefs and fits really nicely with also Hollywood Brown, who's kind of their deep threat now, and Patrick Mahomes giving him the ball. That'll be very scary. Brian Thomas finds his way to Kansas City.
With all of the potential issues that have come out with Rashee Rice, apparently having some stuff in an accident, I think they're going to maybe realistically want to be aggressive and go get a receiver that I think is the top of tier 2 below Rome Odunze. Now, the Green Bay Packers. Packers fans, if you would like to see what this pick was before, because we did do a recording of this, go check Mathis's Instagram and you can, or Twitter, and you can see what I had to pick for the Green Bay Packers. But maybe that's different now. And it might not be. It is random position. Obviously, this can get pretty chaotic. So, Packers fans, hold on. Let's see what random position. I'm going to spin it a ton of times. I tell you, this is not rigged. Spin it a ton. And the wheel is making you guys pick. It's your lucky day. Offensive tackle. Very, very good pick for you guys. Well, out of the main guys here, Amarius Mims, J.C. Latham, Tyler Guyton. I think it's Mims or Latham. And I do think Latham is probably the better player. And he could maybe take over for Bakhtiari now that he is gone. So let's go with J.C. Latham. Very solid. I don't necessarily think has the highest ceiling, but I also think he has a high floor. So I think he's just going to be a pretty solid tackle for you guys and adds to your young core on the offense.
Yeah, so before we actually started filming, we did a little practice run, just going through how everything was going to work. And the Packers actually got random positions. I'll put up on the screen who they had to take. It was pretty hilarious, but I'm glad they get somebody that can help them in J.C. Latham. But the Buccaneers are up next with the 26th pick. And let's see who they can get here. Another team that's very flexible. Offensive line, pass rusher, running back maybe. Who is the wheel going to have the Buccaneers take? And it is going to be defense. And honestly, that's a little bit easy for me because I'm going to have them select Jared Verse out of Florida State. They need some help with their pass rush, letting go of Shaquille Barrett. And they need a little bit more juice. I think it would fit very nice with Todd Bowles, who loves to bring blitzes. Verse, a very powerful rusher, not the fastest guy in the world or has a deep bag in terms of, his pass rushing moves, but somebody that could go a lot earlier than number 26. I think the Buccaneers would be very happy to get him here later in the first round.
Very realistic pick for Tampa Bay there. That could be who's available on the board. Next up, I believe I have the Arizona Cardinals with their second pick, and the wheel is going to make me go consensus. Now, there might not be a major consensus for this pick. Maybe it might just be kind of who's available on the board. We got guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry, Jackson Powers Johnson, Nate Wiggins. But a guy who is still on the board that I think they could take and is a part of the consensus is Jerzon Newton. I don't think he's the best interior defensive lineman, but he's definitely worth around this pick. And the Cardinals have attempted to put a lot of Band-Aids at this position, but Newton will step in and probably be the best interior defensive lineman immediately. So Jerzon Newton to the Arizona Cardinals. They get Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jerzon Newton. With this chaos wheel, honestly, a pretty realistic first round for Arizona.
Yeah, for sure. He's got a lot of hype to go there with their 27th pick. Just taking best player available and going on the trenches there makes a lot of sense. But the Seattle Seahawks are back on the board after trading back 12 selections with the Buffalo Bills. They still need some help on either trenches, and they're going to take a consensus here. This is a pretty tough spot because the way the board has fallen, I don't think the Seahawks are going to take a corner. I don't think they're going to take a safety. A tackle is a little bit of a stretch. Wide receiver doesn't make any sense. So what's really the consensus here with the 28th pick? I'm not exactly sure, but I'm just going to take who I kind of view as the highest potential player here, and that's going to be Amarius Mims out of Georgia. Abraham Lucas, maybe he can move into guard and help out, in that role, because that is kind of the hole on that offensive line, and then move Mims to tackle and have him be the future there. So kind of an interesting selection. The wheel did not do me any favors going with a consensus pick with the Seattle Seahawks, who really don't need any of these positions this late in the draft.
Only 2 more picks left to go for each of us. Feels like this is flown by very quickly. And the Detroit Lions, very good season last year, are going to trade with a team probably someone in the second round is going to jump up into the first. Yes, I am going to have the Lions trade back. That's what I'm forced to do. And yes, it's going to be the Panthers. Maybe because they're my favorite team, but that's besides the point. It's still players at a certain position that fell, and Carolina definitely needs one, and they would want to take advantage of the fifth-year option because they're going to be in a little bit of a rebuild right now. They're going to have to give up, obviously, 33, a third-rounder next year, and 141, 429, and 205, and they are going to go up and get a position that has fallen, and that's obviously corner. A receiver is a possibility with Ladd McConkey or Adonai Mitchell, but I think the corner class, at least the guys still available, is just way too talented to pass up. And the question is, who are we going to go with? There's Cooper DeJean and Terrion Arnold, who I think are the two headlines in terms of who should be drafted. But on my personal board, I think that Terrion Arnold is the second best corner, and I think Carolina, with already a guy in J.C. Horn who is uber talented but just gets injured, I don't think you should take two cornerbacks, one of them it being in the draft where they're falling because of injury concerns. So I'm going to go Terrion Arnold falling in this draft, and he is going to go to Carolina at 29.
I like the selection. Could be a very nice and up-and-coming cornerback duo with J.C. Horn and Terrion Arnold if they could stay healthy. But number 30 is the Baltimore Ravens, another team that lost a good amount of players this offseason in free agency, needs to replenish each of their lines, whether that's defensive line or offensive line. Can we do that here? And it is going to be yet another trade. We're getting so many trades now later in this draft. And I'm going to have the Washington Commanders move up with the Baltimore Ravens, and they're going to take a corner because they had the worst pass defense in the league last year. And they're going to get a very versatile player in Cooper DeJean out of Iowa, a guy that can step in at boundary corner, the slot, maybe even safety. I think that would be a very nice player to build around. And Cooper DeJean going from Iowa to play for the Commanders would be a good fit, a nice piece for their rebuild. And the Ravens move back and get some more capital later in the draft.
Now time for my final pick, what will presumptuously be the 49ers if they stay here. So let's see what the wheel decides. And it's gonna be not the 49ers, another trade, back-to-back trades here to end off this draft. I'm going to have the Chargers trade back up into the first round. There's a player that fell that hits a position of need for them. They are going to go up 6 spots, 31 to 37, and they're going to give up 105 and 181 to get up into the first round. And they're going to take a receiver that has fallen far. They obviously drafted Fuaga with the 5th pick. That's who we had them take. So here at 31, they're going to go with a first-round caliber receiver that has fallen, someone that's going to try and take over the mantle as their wide receiver 1, Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. Very lengthy receiver. I think he is not the most polished guy, but with Justin Herbert, I think he's going to make a lot of his receivers look better than they are. And I do think that he has much better hands, and I like him much more as a prospect coming out now than Quentin Johnston last year. So hopefully he can be the real one wide receiver that they hoped they got last year.
And my last pick of this Chaos Wheel mock draft is going to be with the Dallas Cowboys, who, again, I talked about them a little bit earlier, did not do a lot this offseason, need something to get their fans a little bit of excitement. And we're actually going to land on, of course, opponent pick is going to end off this mock draft. Stone steals yet another selection for me.
What else but another opponent pick for the Dallas Cowboys that I get to choose? And I've got a lot of different options that I could go here. Do I want to get interesting? Do I want to go something realistic? I think based on who they could need, tackle, obviously right up there with Tyler Guyton, but there is also Jordan Morgan. In terms of maybe a position that might not go in the first round, but a guy I really like, maybe you want to see some running backs go in the first round. Jalen Wright, potentially. Jonathan Brooks, the 2 best running backs in the class. That would be pretty crazy, but it is my pick. It's not necessarily a full reach, so I think I will spare you, Dallas Cowboys fans. And while I do like Jordan Morgan as a first-round pick, again, we've kind of said it before, I think Dallas can take risks on O-line because they do a phenomenal job developing them. This probably would have been who Mathis would have taken either way, but let's go Tyler Guyton to finish off the first round. Definitely a raw. He's pretty much even more raw than Amarius Mims, but has insane physical skill. So we'll see if Dallas can end up getting him to be the franchise tackle.
Yep, that's exactly who I would have had the Cowboys drafting, getting a very nice athletic piece in Tyler Guyton. But this is what the draft is looking like. Definitely pretty wild. A couple of just out of this world type of picks, like Peyton Wilson going in the top 10. But this is kind of what the wheel decided. We will see in a couple of weeks if it predicted any crazy selections. Maybe Drake May does go to the Giants. Maybe Nate Wiggins goes to the Vikings. Should be fairly interesting to see how this ages, but that is going to do it for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. If you like who your team had to pick, if you're a Bills fan or maybe even a Cardinals fan, you're probably pretty happy. But if you're a fan of another team that took some reaches, let me know how you feel about that in the comment section down below. And I will leave Stone's stuff in the description. He just uploaded a mock draft a couple days ago. Go check that out. Very good stuff there. But that's going to do it for me. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. And as always, thank you so much for watching. And I'll catch you guys in my next one.